So I'm going to be doing the chalice reading today, and to give you a little background, this popped up on my Facebook page in February, and right after I'd signed up to do the chalice reading for this Sunday. So I saved it, but I thought, this may not be appropriate by the time May rolls around, but unfortunately it is. And this is a poem by Prevail. I can't make the world be peaceful. I can't stall tanks from roaring down roads. I can't prevent children from having to hide in bunkers. I can't convince the news to stop turning war into a video game. I can't silence the sound of bombs tearing neighborhoods apart. I can't turn a guided missile into a bouquet of flowers. I can't make a warmonger have an ounce of empathy. I can't convince ambassadors to quit playing truth or dare. I can't deflect a sniper's bullet from turning a wife into a widow. I can't stave off a country being reduced to ash and rubble. I can't do any of that. The only thing I can do is love the next person I encounter without any conditions or strings. To love my neighbor so fiercely that it starts a ripple that stretches from one horizon to the next. I can't force peace on the world, but I can become a force of peace in the world. Because sometimes all it takes is a single lit candle in the darkness to start a movement. Lord, make me a candle of comfort in this world. Let me burn with peace.
Back to announcements. I just want to welcome you, Becky, and we're just really fortunate to have Michael Carter come from Black Mountain today, and hope you enjoy his presence and his inspirations. Nothing too much else. Anybody else have something to announce or say?
Thank you. Well, good morning again. You got a beautiful space here. Yeah, I feel it's good. It's good. It feels like you can really sink roots into this place and to really grow. So congratulations to you for this beautiful new home. I want to share with you a reading called Gentleness in Living. And I think it's apropos. And afterwards we will have a time of quiet. Be gentle with one another. It is a cry from the lives of people battered by thoughtless words and brutal deeds. It comes from the lips of those who speak them and from the lives of those who do them. Who of us can look inside another and know what is there of hope and hurt, of promise and pain? Who can know from what far places each has come, or to what far places each may hope to go? Our lives are like fragile eggs. They crack and the substance escapes. Handle with care. Handle with exceedingly tender care, for there are human beings within. Human beings as vulnerable as we are, who feel as we feel, and more importantly, who hurt as we hurt. Life is too transient to be cruel with one another. It is too short for thoughtlessness. It is also too brief for hurting. Life is long enough for caring, it is lasting enough for sharing, and it is precious enough to love. Be gentle with one another. And now for this brief moment, while our minds are one, briefly, I leave you with the eloquence of silence. And so it is. My favorite philosopher is William James. He's many things, but he was a pragmatist. And he reminds us that the greatest use of life is to spend it on something that will outlast it. And in that spirit, we will collect this morning's offering. You don't have to get up, but our next hymn is Spirit of Life, 123. Before I begin today's message, a friend of mine at the church in Black Mountain, not every Sunday, but I try to come up with these jokes. They're bad. And so if you don't like them, just don't throw a shoe at me. But they were requested, so bear with me. And it's good to laugh, even at bad jokes. This was a friend of mine told me this. I didn't know how to take it. This is true. She told me, she said, the secret of a good sermon is to have a good beginning and an ending, and to have the two as close together as possible. This is someone who goes to our church. I'm not sure where she was going with that. A minister had assured his congregation that he was their servant. And he committed the cardinal sin, if I could use that word, that he told the members of his congregation that you can call me anytime, day or night. No problem. You don't even have to be a minister to know you never do that. This night, the minister's phone rang at 3 a.m. And on the other end was a dear elderly lady who said, Reverend, I can't sleep. And you're bad. You're bad. And he said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. What can I do about it? And she replied very sweetly, would you preach to me a while? They're not as bad as other ones, but I got some more, but I think you've suffered enough. Oh no, here's a good one. Here's one. A Methodist minister, a UU minister, and an engineer, they were traveling through Afghanistan. And they were captured by some terrorists, and the terrorists were going to behead them. The Methodist minister said that he's been spreading the word of God, and he will leave his fate in the hands of God. So he lies down under the guillotine, and he looks forward to heaven. The blade shoots down, but it stops 4 inches above his neck. The terrorists say it must be the work of Allah. It must be the work of God, so they let him go. The UU minister said that he also has been ministering to the people, and he will leave his fate in the hands of the spirits. And he lies down under the guillotine, and he looks upward, and the blade shoots down, and he's horrified, but again, it stops 4 inches from his neck. The terrorists say, look, who are we? You're free to go. The engineer lies down on the guillotine, and he looks up, and he says, I think I see your problem. It's bad. They're bad. If you call me back, I'll have even worse ones than that. And so, but having said that, it's good to laugh. I've been thinking a lot about hope lately. I know you're wondering why, but if you pick up a newspaper, I'm dating myself, if you read, if you look at the world, you look at the news, and it seems like things are really falling apart. And I remember, and thinking that having hope, isn't really rational. And hope, at times, it doesn't make sense. But hope sees beyond the obvious. At times it may seem naive, but without hope, what do we have? My dad was he was a pragmatist, he was a military man, and sometimes I would slip and I would say, boy, I hope this or that. And he used to say, son, defecate in one hand and hope in another, and see which hand gets full first. And I would say, wow, it's a pretty wise thing. Anyway, but I was getting his point. But as life presents to us the challenges of a pandemic. And you know it's going to come back. These things happen throughout history. May come back 100 years from now, may come back 10 years from now. But if you live long enough, you will see this more than once. Political uncertainty, racial strife, economic strain. With all these things on the table, it is worth considering the power of hope. Many people are suffering physically, emotionally, and mentally because they have lost or do not have hope regarding the future. It's a difficult time. I once heard a motivational speaker, Les Brown, say that hoping is not a process, and I get that, because you got to put some footwork underneath it. You can't just sit around wishing idly. Henry David Thoreau once said that it's okay to build sandcastles in the sky, but there will come a time when you're going to have to put some foundations under them. And so reflections on the importance of hope can be found in any culture on this planet, in religion, philosophy, literature, and just in inspirational thinking. Baruch Spinoza said that there is no hope unmingled with fear, and no fear unmingled with hope. Desmond Tutu reminded us that hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. And hope is broadly defined as an emotional state that promotes the belief in a positive outcome. But no matter how we define, it's one of those words like love. For everybody in here will probably have a different definition. But hope is, however you define it, it is needed, and we need to embrace it. But even with all that, there are times when we have to ask ourselves, does hope really make a difference? What is all the fuss? Is it simply collective or individual denial? Have you ever asked yourself that? What's the use? But faith and hope are linked, but they're different. Hope is a precursor to faith. While faith is believing and trusting in something that you can't see, hope is imagining that there is something there to even believe and to trust in. It is the belief in what could be. Hope redefines what is probable, and it opens the path to what many people would say is impossible. Dr. King said that faith is taking the first step when you don't see the rest of the staircase. Some people would say hope is like that. Faith is putting your trust in the universe, for instance, to help you in a financial difficulty. But hope opens the door to even let yourself consider that there may be a way out of your problem. Without hope, there can be no faith, because we wouldn't even try to visualize a different outcome in any situation. And so what's crucial to understand is this. While faith is the result of a current belief system, hope is desiring a different future. Faith and hope are connected, but you can't have one without the other. And faith truly is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Eventually, and this is another sermon at another time, you want to get to the part where you don't even have to have faith. That you believe, you know, because you've experienced it. When I used to say that coming up, people would think I was arrogant, or I was being, spiritually arrogant, which I can be. But there are some things I know. And I don't need a Bible or a Quran or a Dhammapada. Not that they don't have those truths in there, but once I've experienced it, I know that that can happen. And so for me, that's moving beyond faith. Hope hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. That's from Proverbs. Put simply, hope involves the will to get there, even though you have different ways of getting there. For a more secular perspective, and I'll tie it all together, there's actually scientific evidence. And I want to be careful with science because science has become a new religion. But there's scientific evidence that hope changes us psychologically and physiologically, and that it really does make a difference. In a book entitled The Psychology of Hope, You Can Get There From Here, Charles Snyder describes his definition of hope as the ability to engage in a positive goal thinking comprised of two components. One is agency, which is just another word for willpower. And the other is pathways, which is way power. You find a way. And he considers that hope is the sum of the willpower and the way power for you to achieve your goals. His theory is the most widely used theoretical definition of hope in psychological research. An example of a pathway item would be, there are lots of ways around my problem. Agency would be, I will use my energy to pursue my goals. This is the power of hope. Snyder offers a metaphor as one of the top researchers in what is now called, I had never heard of this, hope research. You ever heard of hope research? In his model, he has what he calls an adult hope scale. And it measures, there's a metric to measure your level of hope. A rainbow is a prism, they use that allegory, and it sends multicolored light, a kaleidoscope in various directions. He's saying that hope to the human spirit, that's not a scientific word, is the personal rainbow of the mind. It's a positive, potent spiritual practice with the power to pull us through difficult times. They also say you can learn how to be hopeful with practice. Certain attitudes support it. One of those is what? Patience. An ability to tolerate delays. Not going to ask for a show of hands of you who are not so patient. I'm one of them. But mine are about control issues mostly. The other is courage. It's an attitude of confidence even when facing the unknown. A third is persistence, the determination to keep going no matter what. And so we have hope when we can say, all will be well, and we really mean it. It is the basic ingredient of optimism. So when people tell you, be of good cheer, that's what they're saying. To be of good cheer. You hear Jesus talks about it in the Bible. Be of good cheer. Another way of looking at it is that hope focuses on the personal attainment of specific goals. Some people say this, hope for the best but expect the worst. The more likely outcome it implies is the worst. When we are without hope, we fall victim to this kind of negativism. When the light of hope is absent, we are overcome by gloom and doom and despair and defeatism. We forget the old Vedic saying that there are times when life gives you knowledge to learn, and there are times when life gives you knowledge that you become. You see the difference? It takes you out of here. It makes you stop living your life from the neck up. I may ask you right now, what do you feel about our government? 80% of you will probably say, I think, but I didn't ask you what you thought. I asked you what you felt. And there's the difference. In terms of personal style, without hope, we find it difficult to be patient and we get frustrated easily. The world's not progressing the way I think it should be. The world's not turning the way, people aren't behaving the way I think they should be acting. And no doubt, it would be a better world if everybody behaved the way we thought, right? In another book called The Anatomy of Hope, How People Prevail in the Face of Illness, Dr. Groupman is his name, Jerome Groupman. He's an oncologist. He wrote this book, and he asks and answers the question of whether there is some type of biological mechanism whereby the feeling of hope can contribute to clinical recovery. Of course, we know it can, but he writes about giving a terminal patient false hope by not telling the truth. He writes about bluntly taking away all hope from another patient with a dire diagnosis. To finding out that any patient, he comes to the conclusion that any patient needs information, choice, and understanding to truly have hope. He says to hope under the most extreme circumstances is an act of defiance that permits a person to live his or her own life on his or her own terms. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel reminds us that just as despair can come to one another from only human beings, we get that from other human beings, it can only be given by other human beings. I'm not so sure. I think other sentient beings, your pets, for example, can give you hope, but this is what Brother Wiesel talks about. Søren Kierkegaard tells us that hope is a passion for the possible. Your vision will become clear when you look into where? Your own heart. And of course, Carl Jung reminds us, who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens. Why is hope important? There are obstacles in life, it's difficult at times, but hope always remains strong on the list of human needs. You must learn, and it's a spiritual discipline, people must also learn to accept finite disappointment, Dr. King reminds us, but to never lose infinite hope. Because in life, there always are going to be failures. There's always going to be wars. There's always going to be pestilence. There always is. When I was a younger man, I used to say, why can't people live? Why is world peace so hard to achieve? Why can't people live? And you know what? That was a young man's foolish dream. It was foolish. It was naive. 3 of us can see a car accident out of here and not agree on what we saw. Do you think 8 billion people are all going to be on the same spiritual evolution at the same time? No. Never have been and never will be. That doesn't say we don't fight, what a metaphor. We don't work towards about world peace. That doesn't say you just give up. But to have, because if you don't, everything that comes your way is going to throw you off. I tell my congregation this. I don't care whether you're blue, red, rich, gay, trans, but white. There's some difficult days coming up in this country, all over the world, in the time ahead. Remember when King got shot, the night before, he said, there's going to be some difficult days. They're coming. They're coming here. The opportunity that we had to make different choices, it looks like we're not going to make those choices. And so that you not only do you have to hope, but you have to go out and make it happen. But you got to brace yourself for some difficult days. So whatever your spiritual practice is, whether you meditate, whether you go look in the woods, whatever you do, you need to start doing it. Because things are going to get a little crazy. And if you don't have a spiritual center, you'll be in despair for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You got to have realistic hope. You never give up and you think your goal is impossible to attain, but you also have to be realistic. Here's some steps. 3 things you can do. And then we're going to go home. To increase hope for a better life. during a pandemic or when wars or whatever. A, you have to imagine a better future. And you have to see that in your mind to make it so. You really do. You have to see it. If you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. We're not talking about what your neighbor's doing, because you can't control what they're doing. I'm talking about be the change you want to see in the world. That's number one. Number two, envision yourself taking action to make it so. When you have a goal, I was sitting in my church office a couple weeks ago, and I had some downtime. I was just staring out the window, and I looked at my degrees on the wall, and I looked at the chair, and I looked at my office, and back when I was in seminary, I pictured where I am now. I made that happen. You can say, well, God made it, but God is in me, if you want to use that word, working through me, if you want to take it there. But I manifested that. That's where I saw people coming to me for insight. I do Reiki, I do hands-on healing. People coming to me for that, sitting in my office with my degrees here, my master's degree, this is my bachelor's degree. I saw that. I saw that 20, 30 years ago, and it happened. So you can create what you want. The last thing you want to do is you want to act on it. You want to take action. Why do people continue to hope? Because history has shown that what you believe becomes possible. The old Cartesian, Newtonian model of science has left the station. It's gone. Quantum physics has had a hand in that. The old model was, show me and I'll believe. But it doesn't work that way anymore. Now it's believe and I'll show you. Believe and I'll show you. And so science has proven the link between research and the researcher and those findings. And still we find it difficult to believe that what is possible depends on what we believe is possible. And so we have to cease seeing the difficulty in things and look at the ease with which what we can imagine becomes real. That's called manifestation. Einstein tells us that imagination is everything. It is the preview to life's coming attractions. It is the preview to life's coming attractions. So you must remember that in the end, only three things really matter. Number one is how much you love. That's number one. Number two is how gracefully you let go of things that were not meant for you. And number three is Carl Jung reminds us that our most important problems cannot always be solved. Some of them have to be outgrown. Some of them have to be outgrown. Happiness is what? It's an inside job. Hope lifts up our eyes. It lets us see what we could be. Hope reminds us that there's always more to the story. Dr. King's mentor, Howard Thurman, said it this way: the contradictions of life are never final. Ever. Hope forces us to keep walking and searching and loving, and it leads to faith in life itself. And if you have a choice between being right and being kind, always choose being kind. And try to remember, when fear knocks at the door and love answers, or fear knocks at the door and faith answers, when fear knocks at the door and hope answers, nobody's there. Nobody's there. It's true that the past may be in your head, but the future is in your hands. So be of good cheer. Or to coin a phrase by Wendell Berry, be hopeful. even after considering all the facts. May it always be so. Amen, ashe, and blessed be.